This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
Being uncomfortable is when you grow. Whether you had to grow because you had to change your careers and find a new environment, being fearless about being uncomfortable, that's where the new skills come. And every leader will tell you, for them to move up to the next level, they had to be uncomfortable and they had to put themselves in a place where they didn't know the outcome.
You know, I've always looked at change like change drives you or you drive change. Like, you actually don't get a say on change. It's happening whether you like it or not. And usually when change drives us, my takeaway on that is that's an act of resilience. And when we proactively drive change and we're hitting the gas on it, okay, and it's conscious and intentional, that is an act of courage. There are two pedals in the same car. Rarely are you hitting them at the same time. And my guest today, if I really go back to the beginning of it, it wasn't like you asked for this change. It wasn't like you're like, please step forward. I want leukemia to hit my family. But here we are. And 22 years later, is that what, am I getting this right, Len?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
I mean, so kind of take me back if you don't mind. And by the way, this may be slightly annoying. I can only imagine how many times people have asked you to go back to the beginning, but like, do you still remember that moment? Is that like stained into your brain when you learned of Matt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, my God, when the doctor says you have leukemia and you're with your wife and you're just trying to process that, it's a gut punch. It's the most memorable day of my life. And you have to face the mortality of your child. Not know what path you're going to go down. So yeah, it was. I mean, I'm sure you've got two kids. You as a dad, how you'd cope with that. You just have to reframe your world in like seconds.
And I think we share a few other things in common. Are you a DMV guy?
DMV,
DC, Maryland, yeah. Virginia. Are you?
I've lived there for 42 years. So yeah, I grew up in Cleveland, but Washington, DC is my home for many, many years. That's where it is now. So are you from that area?
I'm from Potomac originally.
Oh, nice.
My dad, let's see, we have American U in the family as well. Eerily enough, we also have Akron, Ohio in the family. So my mom is from
no
Akron.
Kidding.
She's from Akron. Her big courageous feat was after she was a Buckeye, she made the move to Maryland and eventually met my dad. That was a big deal for someone that had never left Akron before. And it was courageous. Mm-hmm. And I would also say, let's let the audience know where you are right now. I mean, you've had a pretty long, just 30 hours, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I left on Saturday night with my son, Matt. We flew to Newark and then Dubai, and we're now in Kathmandu. So yeah, a couple of time zones different and, a little jet lag, but looking forward to kind of normalizing and then taking off on a pretty cool track.
And can you share what you're getting ready to embark on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So on Wednesday, we'll fly in a helicopter to a little town called Lukla, and then we'll trek for about 8 days to the base of Mount Everest. And then my son will fly home in a helicopter and a jet, and then I'll join an expedition team, and hopefully I'll be successful at summiting to the top.
Amazing, man. And again, I kind of want to set the before and where we're going here. It's somewhere between, hearing about Matt's leukemia diagnosis and today. You've been a very busy man. And a lot of people, they'll hear a diagnosis and it will tailspin them. And I'm not saying it didn't tailspin you, but like it will tailspin them. And people kind of go into poor me mode for all obvious reasons, by the way. And here, if I were to describe Len Forkas, I'd say you're a bit of an energizer bunny. Right? I mean, you're kind of sitting at the intersection here, right? Like, of entrepreneurship, now of philanthropy. I'm curious if you always had this endurance sports play, because that's there. And you're also an author, and you're sitting right smack in the middle of all of those. So which came first, the entrepreneurship, the endurance sports?
I've always, played sports when I was a kid. I mean, that's pretty much all we did, because we didn't have any screens back then. So just played a lot of sports and, started doing triathlons when my son was born. So, I always liked to move and work out and try new things. When he was born, I did the Marine Corps Marathon. I swear to God, I'd never do another one of those. But when Matt got sick, when Matt got sick, I needed something to cope with the stress of his illness. So I just started exercising more. And a bunch of friends in Reston, Virginia, where I live, were doing this race called the GFK 50. It's a 50-mile ultra marathon. And they convinced me to do it. And I decided to use it as a fundraiser to help start the nonprofit that we started. I got, a bunch of friends to pay me to suffer, and I raised a bunch of money and I was able to start a nonprofit. And I realized, wow, if I can continue to kind of do these really tough athletic things, that created a lot of energy around fundraising. And that's kind of, but I did it for me because I needed to cope with the stress. I mean, I needed to do something because he had 3 years of treatment. And so it was kind of selfish in some respects that I needed to gravitate towards something, but it ended up, I was able to pair it with, fundraising, and it really has been very successful.
I mean, the pay you to suffer. I mean, you've biked across America. I mean, you've skied the South Pole. I mean, here we are getting ready, climb Mount Everest, right? There's a lot of suffering going on here, but all for a great cause. So if I'm getting this right, Hopecam started off that first race?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in a nutshell, just going to give you 30 seconds on Hopecam. So, I saw how depressed my son was going through treatment because, they have to suppress the immune system for kids with cancer. So the medication will work. And at the toughest time of his life, when he wanted to be with his third grade friends, he was stuck at home going through treatment or being in the hospital. And I saw that a part of his childhood was like stolen from him. And that part of him was being in the school classroom. Fortunately, I had some relationships in Fairfax County schools, and they had permitted me in 2002, before Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, to put a webcam in his classroom.
Wow.
And it made such a difference because it lifted his spirits, and those kids reminded him that empty chair, that's Matt's chair. No one's sitting in that chair. We want him back. And so they gave him hope, and they reminded him that even though he was gone, he wasn't forgotten, and he was still part of their community. But the real aha moment was when he went back to school in September. He still had 2 more years of treatment to go. But every kid in that class knew what he went through because they saw it in real time. He didn't have to explain himself to anybody as to where he was or why I was gone. And that was when I realized that, everyone focuses on the physical health of kids with cancer, make sure they have the right medication, to make sure in their school, they have a homebound teacher to make sure they don't lose a grade, right? Everybody's focused on education. Everybody's focused on the physical health, but no one was thinking about his mental health. And that was where the fighting loneliness, that's where I came up with the idea is that maybe we can connect some more kids and have that same, so they won't feel so lonely and they won't feel so awkward going back to school.
The Hopecam is, you've helped over 2,800 children, right?
Close to almost 6,000, actually.
6,000 kids. All right. And so I think you're in every state, correct?
Every state, yeah.
As technology has evolved, how has Hopecam evolved?
Well, I think a couple things. One is during COVID, we all saw real time what it's like for all of us to be lonely and to be isolated. We had this huge jump in skill set in terms of teachers, particularly being able to understand how to use video technology. So, and then schools give computers, but the reality is that now that things are more back to normal, the priority to make sure these kids get connected in their classroom is even more important because it's still very hard to do. It's not a priority in most places. So the technology is easier and it's more affordable, but the understanding of what isolation and loneliness does to the mental health of kids is now so important. 2 years ago, we were helping connect 500 kids a year, and now we're almost at 1,000 because of the need and the acknowledgement of the mental health piece. So you'd think that the ubiquity of the technology would make us less relevant, but it's just the opposite. And 70% of the kids we connect go to schools that are called Title I schools. So we're helping some of the neediest kids too.
So this current mission that you're about to embark on, silly question a little bit, but what does success look like for you?
A couple things. Number one is whenever I do crazy stuff like running marathons or triathlons or whatever, I always tell the stories of different children that we've supported. And so a big part of it, we're going to tell the stories of over 25 kids. Every day we're moving, we're going to tell their stories. We've got pictures. I've called a lot of these families and told them what we're doing. And so really matching the challenge that we'll have as we hike and climb with the journey they're going through. So that's number one, is to tell the stories of these children, what they're battling, what their fight looks like, and then how we've been able to help connect them. So that's number one, is bring awareness to the outcomes that we create as a result of the nonprofit work we do. Second is I would like to be successful at summiting. I've done 6 of the 7 summits, and I was there 2 years ago. And after 5 weeks, went for the summit and developed called high altitude pulmonary edema. Came down in a helicopter from Camp 2. I've learned a lot about, what I need to do to be stronger. So summiting would be fun. And then we're trying to raise $1 million. So we're about 2/3 the way there. And those resources will help us help even more kids and sustain the growth that we're seeing, which is we're drinking from a fire hose right now in terms of the number of kids that are coming to us now.
How nervous are you?
I'd be lying if I didn't say there was some fear or nervousness. I think you have to be human and you have to recognize that there's a lot of things you don't control. But the things that I do control, I've been working pretty hard to dial those in. So I feel, much more confident now than in the past. When I came here before, in terms of something I think you appreciate is that we learn more from failure than success. And when I failed with that sickness, I failed big. I mean, that was a big failure to get sick. And I looked at every tripwire that I walked over that caused that. I dissected every one of them. And so here I am, I think sometimes you talk a lot about the universe. The day that I got sick, I had 36 hours to get off that mountain before my lungs filled with fluid. And it was snowing. And at 5 o'clock, right before dark, the weather cleared and I came down. It wasn't meant to be,
Yeah.
Somebody wanted me back and I have some larger purpose, but the reality is that I'm more confident, but I'm not overconfident.
Yeah, I've always been of the mindset of, we're here for a very limited time, right? And if I actually think about what I thought I was going to do in this lifetime, and by the way, I love covering people like you who are going for it and doing it, but I would put myself in the observationalist camp. You're doing it. You're in it. It's interesting to think about, again, you didn't choose this, you responded to this, and here we are. But what you're really doing is you've bridged isolation through connection. And yet, I'm sure when you're on some of these colossal journeys or you're thinking about them, you're kind of isolated in your own brain too. Where do you go, or do you journal? Do you blog? Are you when you have that most vulnerable thought in your mind? Does it just pong around in there? How do you get it out, or how do you cope with that?
You hit the nail on the head with the blog. So I used to be an architect, and so I draw and I diagram. So I always try to document the things I'm experiencing and visually graphics, whether it's a drawing or a diagram or a explanation. So I've done that almost every time I get on a plane and go somewhere fun. I do that. And that's really great because it allows me to filter and it also gives me something to refer back to. So that's a big part of it. The other thing, and the reason I think I've done 6 of the 7 summits, so this will be number 7. And the reason I'm so attracted to going to places like this is because, you have, in one of your podcasts, you talk about a screen batical.
Yeah.
And so effectively I force myself into these screen baticles. I unplug, which is very, really hard to do unless you put yourself in a place where there's no internet. And when you're on the mountain and you're moving up, the only thing that matters is where you put your foot next and how well you're balancing your load, so very much in the moment. And so it's really, to me, it's a form of therapy to be able to forcibly put myself in environments where I have to be hyper-focused and be with the team and be contributing to the team's success. So to me, that's a big part of why I'm attracted to kind of doing these kind of things.
It feels like there's so much, so there are so many boxes you're ticking off here, right? It started for a real primal cause, you're raising money. But the leadership lessons are endless, right? You even just said it, it's the right mission and with the right team, and you can't be successful without them, and vice versa, I imagine. So when you go do one of these excursions, can you not help but think through the lens are you so focused on let me just stay focused on my part and getting through it? Or does your brain wander and you're this is a leadership lesson?
Well, a couple of things. Number one is that nobody does anything alone. And so I'm with a guide or I'm with other team members. And so you're moving together, as a group. So you don't want to drop the ball. You want to be contributing, and you don't want to be negative. You want to be positive. You want to be a net add. And so my mindset is always, how can I make sure that I'm maintaining myself well, that I'm not being a liability, and if in any way I can be supportive. And so to me, when I go for a climb, it's there's no great elation for me when I'm at the summit. I'll be honest with you. So many people videotape, oh my God, I've worked so hard all my life. My dream is to be here. It's like, I feel none of that. I feel zero. What I do is I want to shoot a video of the story I'm telling of the child that I thought about that day at the top and get the heck down. you know but for me, as I look back at all the things I do, it's all about the process and it's all about the sequence. It's all the pieces. It's the journey. It's not the destination for me. I know that sounds really, that's a soundbite, right? But it's really true. I mean, I think I collect and organize and remember all the pieces of all the conversations, knowing who I'm with, what drives them, and also sharing my story, which is very inspirational to a lot of people, because a lot of people do events, whether it's marathons or tries or cycling or climbing, and they're looking for purpose too. And I've been able to contaminate them with my purpose in many respects. And it's really fun to kind of watch how they really buy into, the idea of honoring the bravery of these kids that we help in Hopecam. So yeah, so to me, it's very much, being in the moment.
I don't think people really realize that pass and go on life does start with serving others. And again, whether it was Matt, by the way, I'm curious. So Matt's there with you. Matt's right. What does Matt think of all this? I mean, here's another person that I'm sure he had no interest in getting leukemia, but like, is he like, this is just amazing what you've built? Is he along for the ride? Is he like, I don't really want to be at the center of this anymore? Like, where's his head on all of this?
Well, he definitely gets center fatigue because he was student one or child one. So I think he doesn't like the attention of that, but he also totally is bought into the mission and what we do and gets it and is supportive of us, is super excited to be here. And the first climb I did was with Matt in Kilimanjaro when he was in college. So the first summit was Kilimanjaro. So it's really fun to have closure. Hopefully, if I'm successful, we'll have closure on this one. But no, he's 32 and he works with me on my team. He wanted to work with me the day he came out of college, and I told him he had to work somewhere else for 5 years, and he did. And now he's a super contributor, unique, just integral part of my day job. But yeah, I mean, he's a positive young man, and just so blessed to have him in my life. What can I say? I mean, he knows the stories. He's side by side with me every day.
So you've done so much already. I'm sure it never feels like enough. But I'm curious, what does keep you going on Hopecam's journey?
Well, 16,000 kids get cancer every year. We're helping 700-800 of them, so I want to continue to grow it so that we can, create the resources to be able to do that. So that's a big part of it. But when I grew up, my family, neither of my parents graduated high school. My mom got her GED and my dad got his diploma after serving in World War II. But they believed in education and they wanted a better life for their kids. But my mom always told me that you don't go out in the world and make a lot of money, and then when you're done, you give it away. You have the ability to help everybody every day. And that always stuck with me.
I love that.
Right. And so, a lot of people talk about givers and takers. My mom was a giver, and that rubbed off. So for me, it was like, how do you integrate? But that's how we all feel human, right?
I think I saw this. I think it's the title of your book, What Spins the Wheel? Which you, I think you're often saying, what spins the wheel? First, give a little color what that means to you.
What's your core? What's at your core? What do you believe in? What kind of person do you want to be? Right. And I'm sure for you and we have the same thing. We want to, number one, we got to be a great dad. We got to be a great partner. We have to be a great son and brother and friend. Right. Those are the things that matter. And then all the other things line up. But you get those first parts right and be present and be part of and be curious and be part of the people in the world who are all around you, and understanding them and knowing where they are. So to me, what spins the wheel is the foundational elements of, just, caring, but also it's, it intersects as motivation too, but we can get on that. So.
No, I love the line. I think of myself. I think I can't help but sort of take a moment and like look at my life and the choices I've made, or where choices were made for me, and then where did I take it from there? And same thing for you. 20 years from now, let's say you could sit still for a second, and you're knock on wood, we're all still here, right? Like, I don't see you as a rocking chair guy reminiscing about all of this, but let's just humor me for a sec. When you look back, let's say it's 20 years from now, almost unfair because you got a pretty big week ahead of you, right? But like, let's say the rocking chair is there and you look back at it all. Len the dad, Len the founder, Len the giver. Like, where does your brain go on all that?
I really don't think about that. I really don't think about looking backwards, to be honest with you. I mean, I sound kind of selfish saying that maybe, but I really, I mean, to me, it's like, I think I'm going to stop when I'm dead. I don't imagine being in a rocking chair. I don't imagine sitting still. I don't imagine slowing down. I mean, as long as my body and my mind and my health is with me, which is everything. So yeah, so I'll be honest with you, Brian, that's a tough one. What does that mean for you?
I mean, I'm so far beyond what I thought I was going to do in this lifetime. And I don't know if that means my bar was low. You know what I mean? But I've always been competitive, and God forbid something ever happened to me, I am completely at peace with this arc. I'm completely at peace with the choices I made and where I landed. I see myself in a love story with the word of courage, and it's very wide, right? So I love telling courageous stories. I love having people on that are courageous people. I love people that are willing to take on fear. I'm not great with people that aren't willing to go for it. I'm not great with people that, and there's almost always a moment where you're staring something that's terrifying in the face, and now you have a choice on what you do with that information. And so I'd say with, I see if I ever am in a rocking chair, to your point, I'm proud of me. I'm very proud of the choices that I made. And again, I'm trying to lay down, I know we talked about the podcast I had with my kids before. I'm trying to just lay down a blueprint that they can, if they so choose to accept, that they can follow. There's like clearly probably how you feel about your drawings. Like if someone wants to follow somewhat of a path of a treasure map of what it means to live a courageous life, right? There's enough there for them to take and run with. I imagine, again, that it would be cool. Do you ever see that show, Quantum Leap? Remember Quantum Leap? Where you like and he just sort of zips all over the place, right? The time traveler. This isn't perfect, but like, again, if Matt, do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
Matt. Mm-hmm.
That's funny. I have a brother named Matt, but sometimes we call him Matthew. So that's where that's coming from. Like if Matt never gets sick, where do you think you are right now? Like, where do you think, are you just like,
oh my God, that is the core question, right? That is the core question. So my dad drove a Higgins boat in the Battle of Okinawa in World War II. I mean, he was in the thick of it, and he came back traumatized by it, as anyone would. But he built a life, put his kids through college, was just an amazing dad, and was not an educated man. But I remember when I lost my first job after college, and I was devastated. Company went under. I had to find another career, And he told me, he said, Len, he said, sometimes when the worst things are happening to you, it leads to opening a door that sometimes the best things can happen to you. And that was cancer for me. I mean, the fact that Matt's illness, put me in a place to discover something that no one was really focusing on, kind of niche. And the fact that I've been able to, have so many people, that have joined our organization and supported us on our board, our supporters, our investors that have helped us create the outcomes we create. I mean, it really changed my life forever, So there you go. The worst day of my life has led to every day being the best day of my life. That's the universe, right? I mean, I think sometimes we have a purpose we don't know, and I believe that. I wasn't very spiritual. I went to Catholic school when I was a kid. I had to go to church. I was an altar boy, and then I just rebelled and never stepped foot except for Easter. But I'll tell you, you can't not be spiritual when you think about the life of your son and the prayers people give and prayers people have for me when I put myself in tough spots. So it really allowed me to rediscover that part. of my world. And I'm sure that you've been in that same situation, several, in terms of spirituality. So,
Well, I'd say I also have I have a term for what you just explained. What a surprise a writer is going to have that has bent words in a certain fashion, but I call that a negative blessing. I call it the negative blessing, and our negative blessings, the low is very different. Mine was I could see myself being walked out of a 700-person ad agency in New York City and feeling, I'm not going to, it doesn't compare to cancer, but it's my stain that I felt embarrassed. I felt stupid. I felt ashamed. I'd given 7 years of myself to a company and like in a blink was let go. And I don't think it was personal. I felt it was personal. I wasn't making enough money for it to be anything but now I look back on that day like, oh my gosh, like if that day doesn't happen, I don't get a chip on my shoulder. I don't move to California. If I don't move to California, I don't meet my wife. I don't meet my wife. We don't have our kids. I know I wasn't on a path to becoming an entrepreneur. I just wanted to write funny stuff that entertained 2.2 million people, which was more important to me at the time than having 2.2 kids. And now we have 2.2 kids. We have a very small dog who's our point two. So, I'm like, I honor that moment. And again, it's not that everybody needs a negative blessing, but when you spot it, it's what do you do with it? And that was mine. And it sounds like Matt, that was yours for Matt. If you think about, this might be, if I'm going through something daunting, like what you're about to go conquer, let's put positive vibes into the world. What can you give people? Like give people the process that you go. Like if you're going to give them any sort of tools or a little bit of ammunition, because we're all facing summits, colossal summits in our life. What are like the 3 to 5 things you would say to get me ready to take on that mountain?
Oh yeah, well, I don't have like anything written down, but I can tell you, you have to be able to put yourself in a comfortable place. Being uncomfortable is when you grow. So whether you had to grow because you had to change your careers and find a new environment, but the reality is that when we're comfortable, we tend not to grow as much. And so I'm not saying seek uncomfortability, but I'm just saying is that being fearless about being uncomfortable that's where the new skills come. And every leader will tell you for them to move up to the next level, they had to be uncomfortable and they had to put themselves in a place where they didn't know the outcome. 2 is do the work. And you got to do the work and you got to have the work ethic and you got to show up and you got to put the work in. And so I got invited to climb Mount Vincent by a very good friend of mine who's led over 200 expeditions. And he invited me to come and said, why on earth do you want me to go with you on this climb in Antarctica? I mean, I don't know. I've never climbed on a glacier. I've climbed Kilimanjaro, but it's more of a hike. I said, I'm not qualified. He said, number 1, he said, you got a positive attitude. So that counts more. Number 2, you're super strong. So you'll just carry more weight. He'll be our mule. We can teach you the skills. You got the attitude. We can teach you the skills. We'll go set you up on a training program and get ready. So be fearless about trying new things. And number 2, do the work, prepare and focus on the things you can control. And then the third thing is it's all in your mind. It's your mindset. And you have to be able to believe in yourself and you have to be able to be ready to reframe because something's going to happen. Like, for example, when I climbed that mountain, Mount Vincent, we summited. We had to fly out of a jet to get to Antarctica and then a small plane to get to the mountain. And after we summited, there's another book I wrote called Cold Hard Truth. And we summited, we came back down. It took 2 weeks for the planes to come pick us up because the weather was terrible, either where we were or where the planes were taking off. We weren't alone because there were other people and other expeditions, but we had 1 meal left when the planes came. And I missed Christmas.
Wow.
And I had to call my family on the sat phone and tell them where I was, and they were fearful for me. And at that moment, I realized I had no control. I had absolutely no control over when that plane was coming. I couldn't control the pilots or motivate them. They were going to fly when it's right? So I had to reframe my environment there, and I looked at what I could control. There were 30 other people from 20 countries that had summited. We were all waiting for the planes. So no one was going to starve. We were just dying of boredom. And I decided, and the sun's spinning around all day, so it never gets dark. It gets cold because when the storms come, it's minus 40, and you have to build walls around your tent so the wind doesn't blow your tent over. And some days you can't even get out of the tent; it's so cold. But when I could get out of the tent, I decided I was going to meet everybody in the camp. There were 29 people from 20 different countries, and that was my new mission. So I think the final thing is you control how you adapt to the environment you're in, and you can reframe it any way you want. So for me, rather than counting the hours of how long I was there, I was counting the people who I haven't gotten to meet yet. And during COVID, we all learned that we had to reframe where we worked, who we interacted with, how we ate meals, how we interact with everybody. So I think we all have the capacity to reframe and turn negatives to positives in the environment we're in when it's super negative. Temperature, social, family guilt, all that. I think that ability to reframe in your mind, set new goal, and just focus on what you can control. I think those are the three things.
The last one is so powerful. In some ways, it's you get what you focus on, right? And I think when we say that line, it almost loses its luster. So another way to say that is what you focus on gets bigger. And you made a choice to I'm just going to meet everybody. It's going to meet everybody. And I mean, you've set a mission, and you're going to just go fulfill the mission. I mean, it's the amount of times we get stuck in our heads. So one of the books I'm working on right now is about self-talk, and the idea is it's looking at, wow, the only way you can ever fully be yourself is when you kind of realize there's two of you in there, right? No, we're not bipolar, but there's this monster that's in there, and there's this maverick that's in there. And when we're not careful, it's the monster that usually wins out, and the monster is the one that's telling you can't do something, and the monster is the one that's bubbling up all the fear, and the monster is the one that's like, we're going to run out of meals. And what hoping people will do is hey, you've got a maverick in there too that should be auditing the monster. And it isn't that the monster is a horrific part of you. It's just calling out all the things that you got to watch out for, to all your watch outs. It doesn't mean you need to listen to that little voice. And I think that's the other side of self-talk. Is we're doing too much self-listening to our self-talk versus just telling us what we're going to do. And so I loved in that moment you told yourself, nope, new mission. I'm going to meet everybody in the camp. And that's how I'm going to stay locked in on that mission, and I can't control the rest, which is so great. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for this summit and what you're doing. And I mean, I feel like I'm on Team Len because we're going to promote this. We're going to get it out there and do our part. I know you're on your way to raising $1 million. How else can we help?
Well, you're doing it right now. You're honoring us with the credibility of your voice and your brand. So thank you for honoring us and telling our story. And hopecam.org is our website. I'll blog every day on where we are and how we're doing. And if the outcomes that we create by telling the stories, because you're a great storyteller, right? And so the key is, and the reason you're so successful is because Brian, you bind the story with a place or an environment. And that's what people remember. People remember the lessons they learn when they hear about it in the context of a really unique place. So while I'm on the mountain, I'm going to be telling the stories of these children and how Hopecam's helped them in the battle they're going through. They're fighting for their own mortality. I mean, I can turn around and come home anytime. These kids have to get to the end. And so they inspire me, they inspire everyone that's around me as I tell these stories. And so the key thing is that we want, if people are moved by the stories of these children and how Hopecam supported them, if they're moved by that, and that resonates with them and how they want to make the world a better place, then invest in us. Because that's ultimately what we want, is we want people to invest in the outcomes that we create. And by giving visibility like you're doing right now, that helps spread the word about the kind of outcomes we create, and that potentially helps us grow. And so that to me is so powerful, is what this podcast will do. So, but I have one more story I got to tell you before I leave.
Oh yeah, I got my coffee. You've got your coffee. We got time.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to. I just want to hear you hear this. So doing this is a little selfish, right? Because I'm gone from my family for 5-6 weeks, and I'm gone from my workplace because I own my own business. And I always tell my team, I'm not taking conference calls on the side of the mountain. I trust you guys, do your job. I can't move forward unless they pick up the slack, and they're great at it. But when I did Race Across America, so I think I told you, I raced 3,000 miles in 11 days. So I'm training for it. And I'm spending 30 hours a week training. And my daughter, Vienna, who was 13 at the time, this is 2012, and she pulled me over one night, like 9 o'clock at night. She said, "Dad, can you come here? I need to sit. I need to talk to you." So she pulls me aside and she looks at me and she says, "I know you're doing this bike race for a good reason, and you're doing it for Hopecam and so forth. But I have to tell you that in the last 3 or 4 months, you haven't been much of a father. I mean, sometimes I needed help with my homework, and I come to you and you're asleep because you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go ride for 3 hours before work. On Saturdays, you used to cook pancakes for my girlfriends when they had sleepovers. Instead, you're out riding your bike. I mean, I know you're doing this for a good reason and a good cause, and it's for a good purpose. But as a father, you just really have let me down."
Wow.
She's 13. Well, first of all, I mean, how brave is a 13-year-old to actually say that to her father? I mean,
Totally.
most kids just act out, right? And so I thought about it, and I said, Vienna, you're absolutely right, and you deserve better. And this race is going to be over in a couple of weeks, and all I know, I don't know how, but I'm somehow going to find a way to make it up to you. And so for the next couple of years, I cooked a lot of pancakes. So again, whether you do this stuff for, whether it's, running marathons or whatever, it's selfish. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a selfish sport, and you have to be a way to prepare and to do this work, but you have to balance it, and you have to put money back in the human checking account with your family and your community and so forth to pay it back when you're in between. And to me, that's the balance. And my daughter's going to be 27 years old. She lives in New York City, and she's very successful, and I'm so proud of her, and like I am with my son. And, but I'm so proud of the fact that she could tell me that. And so often as leaders, nobody tells you that. No one tells you. No one's brave enough to pull you aside and say those words to you. And I feel very successful as a parent that I raised a daughter that could do that, and my son could do it as well.
Before you had even said that she was brave, can't not think like how courageous was she, and she was just keeping it real. And also both sides, she didn't act out and you didn't act out. And I just ran into this line: there are no lazy kids, only lazy parents. And I feel like there's some truth to that too, right? Like, how do you've instilled a work ethic in both of your kids. I mean, they've obviously seen what you're doing, right? But so cool. This is such a good lesson for me right now with my kids. This is part of my fears. I'm living on airplanes, right? And with a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I want to make sure I'm as good of a dad and husband and human that I can be. But I'm still human, and I'm sure they're feeling some of that. How many pancakes do you think you made, by the way?
Hundreds. Mostly blueberry.
I was going to ask you, was there a go-to? The ask was the blueberry?
Yeah. Yep. Got a good waffle maker, got a good pancake maker, and a lot of blueberries, a lot of pancake makers.
Awesome.
Rob Lowe wrote a book called Stories I Only Tell My Friends. He wrote this like 10 years ago. And I love this. I love this story because he talks about your kids never learn anything from what you say. They learn from what you do. They watch you. So you were talking about the breadcrumbs, that you want to leave for your kids and kind of show them the path. But, we're leaving breadcrumbs every hour, every day, whether they get noticed or not. Bottom line is they get noticed. And so it's the actions, not the words. And his most proudest way to end the book was Friday night, my teenage boys want to hang out with me, watch a movie on the couch. I mean, that's it. I'm a success. I may never make another film or movie, but I'm a success because, that's the family I raised. And I feel the same way, but it's all balance, right? And you got to pay back, and you take and you give, but you got to balance it.
I have two more questions for you, but I have one I definitely want to get your take on. What would you say to a parent going through a diagnosis today? Like, if you just go back, because you've now gone down a road that many are terrified of, right? So what? And again, I don't think I need to share this component, but not as Len a founder, but Len a dad. What would you say?
Well, I got to take you back to the day we were walking across the Sky Bridge to go to Inova Fairfax Hospital. So January, it's 5:00. We had just gone home to get his pajamas and his backpack and so forth. So we were checking into the children's hospital, and at Inova. We're walking across this long sky bridge in the dark, and the parking deck's behind us, and the steel doors are in front of us. And I look down, and Matt's holding a statue of St. Matthew. My mom gave him at his first communion. And he looks up at me as we're walking across this sky bridge, and he asked me if he was going to die. The parking deck that's behind us, well, that's our old life. We're never going back to that. That's before cancer. And the new world are the steel doors. We have no idea what's behind them. But everybody asks me, what did I say? What was my answer to that? Yeah, my answer was, Matt, I don't know. But I do know this. I'm going to be by your side every minute of every day that we're going through this. I'm never leaving your side. And we're fighting this together. And we're gonna get through it, dude. But we're gonna get through it together. But I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that I know, because I don't know. But I do know that we're gonna fight like hell, and I'm right here. And I think that, so for a parent going through it, knowing that it's a journey and it's not straight line, there's going to be a lot of bumps. Sometimes his white cell count would go crazy, and it looks like he was going to relapse, but it was a false alarm. But you still go through it. But I think that it's just have hope. Stay focused, stay positive. One thing that happens is that usually within the first 2 or 3 weeks or months, a lot of people in the community will come and support you. They'll bring meals, they'll want to help you and so forth. But after like 3 months, life goes on and everybody goes back to normal. But you still got years to go through. And so it's a long, long haul. And I think that that's where you just have to, you're running a marathon. And then the other thing is, pay close attention to your siblings, because the kids, my daughter, it was hit hard by it because all the focus was on my son, and the siblings really feel it. And so a lot of times people would say, hey, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. And I would say, hey, how about taking my daughter to the movie?
Yeah.
How about taking Vienna to to go bowling, or whatever. But those are the kind of things that that people overlook, because when kids get cancer, families get cancer. Everybody's traumatized by it. And in many respects, the children definitely have a form of PTSD because they have to acknowledge their own mortality at a very young age for these kids. But I'm sorry, but the families have it too, because they're having to think of that potential outcome, even though it might be low, but the reality is that it's not guaranteed. Kind of like me climbing this mountain, right? It's not guaranteed. It's very low probability that I'm not coming home, and I'm going to make really good decisions, but I have to prepare my family for that. I have to prepare for that. Things can happen I have no control over, right? So I think that's the key, is to acknowledge the lack of control and acknowledge that every day you can be positive about it and be focused. But it's a rough road.
Cannot see myself between those steel doors in the last life, and that's a very real moment. Len, I'm glad to be on your team, man. If I can ever continue to support, I will, and you know where to find me. I've got lots of ideas, which I can't turn off. That could be another time than the podcast, but go do what you do. Keep it up, and all love to your family. And before you know it, you're going to be making pancakes at someone's place. That's pretty clear.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's a real pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. You have a great night.
Thanks, Len.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.